the murder of Crystal Beslanowicz in 1995 and the murder and assault of Anna Palmer in 1998. Two gruesome crimes, two young girls who will never get to grow up, and two families stricken with grief, struggling to find closure. Each of these cases went cold. Each of these cases wasn't solved. And after so many years, it is easy to believe that their families must have lost hope along the way. Until recently, with the advancement and growth of forensic technology, these and many other cases that were once cold have now become closed, and justice has been served. Today, I will give a brief overview of forensic science, the techniques used, and how the practice has improved from the early beginnings to present day. Forensic science's base definition is the application of scientific principles and techniques to matters of criminal justice, especially as relating to the collecting, examination, and analyzation of physical evidence. There are a lot of different aspects of this practice, including DNA sequencing, fingerprinting, and facial reconstruction. There are many others that are used to find the missing pieces of each puzzle. According to the book, Media and Criminal Justice, written by Dennis Stevens, forensic science was found in one of the earliest uses in the 8th century. The Chinese used fingerprints to identify documents and sculptures. The basic principle the Chinese refined is linked to the theory of transfer, which says when two objects meet, some evidence of that meeting can later be found and verified. Another early example, taken from a book written in 1248, Cai Duan Yu, or The Washing Away of Wrongs, published by the Chinese, distinguishes how to distinguish drowning from strangulation. 1784 saw one of the first ever documented cases of physical matching to solve a crime, when an English gentleman was convicted of murder because a torn piece of newspaper near the murder weapon was matched with one staying in his coat pocket. The 1800s also saw tremendous growth, with the development of tests for the presence of blood in forensic context, a bullet comparison used to catch a murderer, and the first recorded use of fingerprints to solve a crime. Later on, in the 1900s, there was even more progress with the study of vocal identification, the invention of the breathalyzer, as well as the use of heated headspace in order to find evidence for cases related to arson. The headway made through the years brings us to where we are today. Forensic science is regarded as a necessary and crucial part of investigating crimes, and with widely used techniques such as DNA sequencing and facial reconstruction. DNA sequencing has helped to both convict guilty people of the crimes they committed, but to also help to get innocent people out of prison when they were wrongly thrown in there for crimes that they did not or could not have committed. How it works is that most people have similar gene sequences, but there are a few areas in which they differ widely from person to person. So what you'll do is you take the DNA from the evidence and the DNA from the person, and if those widely varying places match up, then you found a match and you can go on with convicting the person. Facial reconstruction is a method used to identify remains. An expert in facial anatomy, who is also a sculptor, will work with a forensic anthropologist to help reveal age, sex, and even ancestry of a victim. This technique can also help to find injuries, facial asymmetry, and missing teeth, and can also show if it was done before or after the murder. Some example of these forensic sciences causing breakthrough in cases bring us back to the two murders I mentioned earlier. Crystal Beslanowicz, in 1995, was a 17-year-old girl who got into prostitution and drugs at a young age. She was beaten to death with a rock, and her body was left on the side of a river. The case was not solved, and then 18 years later, DNA evidence from the rocks, as well as from under the victim's fingers, was collected to help solve this murder. According to an article by the forensic colleges, Touch DNA was lifted from the murder weapon using a DNA vacuum. When they suspected the murderer, Todd Bonner, the sheriff's deputy at the time the case first came to light, followed Joseph Michael Simpson, and when he smoked a cigarette and tossed it, they matched the DNA from the murder weapon to the cigarette tossed on the ground. They later convicted him. This case was solved 18 years after the gruesome killing. Anna Palmer was a 13-year-old just going to play with her friends when she was abducted, assaulted, and murdered in broad daylight. Her mother came home later than usual and found her lying on the porch. She tried desperately to save her life, but it proved fruitless as her spinal cord and throat had been cut. During the initial investigation, they took DNA from under the victim's nails and put it in the CODIS system. CODIS collects all the DNA and adds it to a database. There was no movement in the case for a while until Matt Breck was arrested for something completely unrelated, and when his DNA was put in the system, it flagged it as a match to the Anna case. He was questioned and eventually pled guilty and was sentenced to a life in prison, a max security prison at that. Both of these advancements caused discoveries that have changed lives. Throughout time, so many people have gotten away with horrible crimes such as these two vicious murders. And with this technology, people get away with crimes less and less and could be tempted even less to commit them, knowing there is a higher stake of them getting caught. Most importantly, with these advances, justice is served and families can finally find closure. Thank you.